Call the roll.
Calling the roll, Mr. Jones.
Here.
Ms. Stevens. Ms. Stevens absent at the moment. Ms. Simon. Ms. Simon is absent at the moment. Mr. Gallagher. Here. President Brady.
Here.
We have a quorum. Also like the record to reflect that council members Baker and Miller are also in attendance.
Excellent, excellent. All right. Ashley, has anyone signed in for public comment?
Yes, Mr. Chair, Ms. Liu.
Yes, sir.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm here today for something a little bit different from my usual topics. This is from my observation from the last week, Tuesday, when we passed that important county ordinance to make sure that the county land bank will be the entity to receive funds and start doing the work. So we can move on from demolition only phase for the county development. In the past, we had others important resolutions or projects to go through. I will use two of them as an example. The Q transformation, which was a very controversial one, and also the anti-discrimination county ordinance. From these two, you can see you have all the people coming to the meeting from the beginning to the end. From the meeting started talking about these cases all the way to the third reading adaptation, that's what I mean. And they will come here to tell you what they feel about it, their opinion, their suggestion. However, Tuesday, we had no housing experts or housing advocates. From the information I have received, I know this is the right timing to put on this ordinance to ensure all the works will go into the right order. However, since there's no other pieces to go with this one, housing advocates and lots of housing experts are very disappointed. So they feel that they were slapped at the face, because think about that. 13 organizations put up the suggestion, a big plan together, but only one was the one adopted by county ordinance as a foundation to do important work. They feel that their faces were slapped. That's why they did not come to the third reading for this important county ordinance to pass. I feel bad about it because I can see the drawback. With this ordinance only, lots of things will happen not as intended. For example, even land bank doesn't make any mistake, but land bank only has a limit to do the work to a certain end. Later, you don't know those developers will actually do whatever they promise or not. All the values of the property, you go either for the real cost to evaluate or you go for comparative sales. In this case, if they want to make the trick, even they didn't really pay much to get the land from the land bank, but they will only want to apply comparable sales to make the price high, how could people survive? This is how gentrification started already, and this hurts everybody. So please, I urge this committee and all the members in the county council to make up all others legislation which will go very well with this one to make people believe we truly develop housing plans for everybody, for the whole county. It's not just, a good name for it on the paper. You really want to do something. I wish that's what you would do. No matter what kind of priority it is, this has to come. Thank you.
Thank you. Ashley, has anyone else signed in?
No, no one else is signed in.
All right, thank you. At this time, can we have a motion for the approval of our minutes from the January 28th meeting? So moved. Moved and seconded. All in favor say aye. Yeah. All right, the minutes are approved. All right, Ashley, would you read our resolution into the record?
Resolution number 2019-0061, making awards to various municipalities and nonprofit organizations in the total amount of $1 million for various projects or programs in connection with the 2019 Community Development Supplemental Grant Program for the period 3/1/2019 to 2/28/2020.
And Sarah, if you'd like to speak to this matter.
Good morning, Sarah Parks Jackson with the Department of Development. First of all, I'd like to thank our Deputy Chief Greg Huth, who's hiding back there in the back, and Deputy Director Ken Surratt for the support that they have provided to me and my staff as we work through this program and others. So the Community Development Supplemental Grant process this year, or last year, began September 25th with the release of the application. We had an information session on October 19th with responses to the application due November 30th. We received 52 applications, which was up from 37 from the 2018 round. 14 of those applications were nonprofits and 38 were from communities, with a total amount requested of $2,520,327. What we've noticed in the past 3 years with the information that we now have available is the top 3 categories of requests for funding are parks, playgrounds, and gardens, streetscapes, and community centers and senior centers, with asks for infrastructure and safety staying constant at about 5 per category per year. Of the 20 recommended applications you have before you for 2019, 9 of the projects are first-time recommendations, and 6 of the recommended projects have received funding in the previous rounds. The 2019 Review Committee consisted of representatives from the Department of Development, County Council, County Planning, Public Works, Cleveland and Cleveland State University College of Urban Affairs. Our applications are scored on a 100-point scale with a maximum of 30 points for the description, 50 points for activity impact, and 20 points for schedule implementation. As is always, the Department of Development and staff make themselves available to discuss with organization how their applications can be stronger in the future. Before I open for questions, allow me to acknowledge that we had some administrative as well as operational challenges last year that caused delays in how we administered the program. We believe those challenges have been resolved, and the addition of new staff will help that significantly, and we do not anticipate any issues moving forward. I ask that you approve the recommendations, and I'll answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Sarah. Are there any questions from the committee? Councilman?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Were there any applications by the City of Cleveland itself, City Hall?
No, sir. Over the past 3 years, we have not ever received an application specifically from the City of Cleveland.
Well, I think that what this does demonstrate is that the decision that this council made 3 years ago to allow CDCs to be able to apply for this money was the correct one. And the opinion was that City Hall would never take the time to even deal with money this at $50,000 a pop. And so I think that's been proven out. And there are several CDCs within the city that did apply, that did get funds. I'm just glad we gave them that opportunity and rather relying on the City of Cleveland to do that, which they currently apparently have no interest in. Thank you.
Any other questions? Councilwoman Baker?
Yes, just a question. This is becoming a very popular program, and many of our cities are becoming more and more aware of it. The $1 million that we put into this, and then the selection process of $50,000 each, do you find that there are close calls, that it's hard to determine one from another because they are all, or at least many, are good projects that perhaps didn't make the cut? How do you decide, or how does the committee decide, you know, who will receive and why some others won't? And is that a tough decision, or is it pretty clear cut each time?
To the councilwoman, it's a tough decision, but it's made easier because we have a point system. And we also group the applications in categories. So all of the parks and playgrounds are scored as a group, and infrastructure scored as a group. Safety is scored as a group. After that, we look at all the applications and just start at 100 and work our way down until we hit $1 million. There have been times where, for example, last year, we hit the $1 million, but we had carry forward, so we were allowed to do another city, which it actually tied with the one before it. So what happens is if we hit a tie, where we have 2 or 3 communities that have the same points, and then the committee will re-review those applications again to determine, can we fund all 3? Can we do one? And that's the process. So I think if you see the number of applications we received, the committee works really hard to evaluate those folks and what they have provided us and information as to what they want to do and how far-reaching their project will be for the community.
Sarah, one of the questions I often get from the cities or CDCs who don't win is, well, what was wrong with my project? So I know you have a process, a valid process for helping them to better understand. But share with us, what are some of the things that you find lacking in projects? What are some of the things, maybe some of the conversations you've had around how a better project is presented?
To the councilman, the basic conversation I have with most of the folks who call is that their application could be better if they fully explained what it was they were attempting to do, who it was going to serve, and what the benefit, not just for a small area, but for the neighborhood at large would be. A lot of applications don't score well because they're lacking information. And what happens, some of us may know the information at the table. However, that's not what was written in the application. So because I know that ABC organization is doing a great job, if they don't explain it in the application, I've got 5 to 7 people in a room who don't have that information.
You mentioned there were 52 applications, did I get that right?
Yes,
And that was up from the previous year?
yes.
Okay. Tell me again the number of how many were actually approved. Oh, we had 20 were approved of the 52. Okay. Let the record reflect that Councilwoman Sunny Simon is in attendance. Okay. Any further questions from the committee?
I'm just curious for next year, when raising the awareness of this program to our cities, do you score higher if they have a parks and playground request, or if it's a streetscape or safety or community centers? Are there different levels that you look to say this is really the intention of this program is to try and enhance parks and playgrounds, or is it just subjective?
To Councilwoman, it is on that point scale. We do not make a difference. All applications are scored on the 100-point scale. The description itself is worth 50 points, so that's where people need to really be cautious and give us as much information as possible and succinctly describe what the project is and who it's going to serve.
Good to know, thank you.
Sarah, so of the 52 that applied, we have awarded 20, so that leaves about, 32 that obviously didn't win? How many of those actually came back and asked those questions, what could we do better?
I received a number of phone calls last week where I answered the questions, and they'll trickle in this week. They'll trickle in some more next week as more word gets out of the applications being awarded and who wasn't awarded. People will ask me for the winning applications, which we provide to them if they want them all. We put them on a flash drive. If they just want the top scores, we provide those as well so that they can see what that application looked like that perhaps scored 85 or 90 as opposed to their
So they're able to
application.
see what the winning applications actually look like.
Yes.
So that is, are there any further questions? All right, well, if there are no further questions, I will make a motion that we move this resolution to the full council under our regular reading. Do you need anything special?
No.
to the full council under our regular reading. Moved and seconded, all in favor say aye. Aye. Ayes have it. All right, thank you, Sarah.
Thank you.
At this time, we have our presentation from,
Chairman,
yes,
could I ask a question to Ms. Jackson?
oh, you certainly can. Ms. Jackson, don't leave. Greg, you,
I've been fighting a battle for months over the CAMS Area Development Corporation, which still has not received a contract or their funding from the previous round. And I would like if you could enlighten me on what the problem is and whether it's relates to just this one contract or whether there's other similar problems and how quickly it can be resolved.
The councilman, CAMS received their signed contract last Monday. We are in the process of finishing up the reimbursement that they requested so that we can get that out. Part of the challenges that we had last year is I lost a staff person who actually got promoted, who used to do all of the work in processing all the paperwork that we have to gather from the communities and the organizations to input into the system to get it approved and signed off on. We also had a couple of changes in our procurement process, which we had a little bit of a learning curve on, especially since I was the one trying to do that and other things. But we feel now with the addition of a new staff person who was recently hired that we have corrected all of those issues. So it was not just CAMS, it was a programmatic, and some other programs were affected as well. And we have moved forward to get those moved and paid.
And am I right that the applicants didn't do anything wrong, that the problem was at this end? Is that
No,
correct?
the problem was on this end, yes.
Okay.
I acknowledge that, yes.
Okay, fine.
Councilwoman Simon?
Thank you, Sarah. So, I'm sorry, when you speak to other programs that were affected by the loss of that promotion of that employee, that included the CDBG issue as well, correct?
That's correct, yes.
And so what I'm hearing now is that you feel comfortable that the staffing level is adequate to be able to handle those timely this next round?
I do. We have, I believe we have everything in the system now to be processed as of probably Friday.
You know, because we need to know, I just want to say that this is so vital to the communities that if there is, maybe your staff thought they could pick it up and didn't know what they didn't know, but for future, I think we would be really happy to hear if there's going to be a glitch in advance so we can address it in whatever way we can, because the communities really depend and rely on getting these things done quickly with, especially CDBG that have the parameters of time that constrain getting road projects done. So let us know,
Will do. Thank you.
please.
Yes.
Thank you.
There no further questions? You can get away this time. You have to run faster next time, you know? All right. Well, at this time, we're going to have our presentation and update. We approved our Brad Street Landing Pier. Please, Mayor, come forward last year. And now we're here to receive an update from the mayor and her staff, again, regarding the pier. So again, we turn it over to you, Mayor.
Thank you, Chairman Jones. Excuse me, a little bit of a cold on a Monday morning. I want to thank you and the other members of the committee for your interest, continued interest in this project, obviously your important support for this vital project. And before I begin, I want to, oh, Sarah probably left. Someone asked a question about helping communities that don't score well or aren't funded. Sarah has been a wonderful resource for us in the community, not only to myself, but to others. And so we thank you for allowing that to happen, because that's how we learn to create better submissions to the county. So I just wanted to add that we have benefited greatly from both the CDSG and the CDBG funding.
We appreciate that.
So we are we up? There we go. So Bradstreet's Landing, again, we wanted to provide a brief update. Today with me is our Safety Service Director, Mary Kay Costello, who's been the lead from the administration, working with our engineers. And again, I just thank you for your commitment to what will have a project that will have community impacts, environmental impacts, as well as economic impacts. I'll begin with, hopefully you can see this well in front of you. That is the winter wonderland that is Bradstreet's Landing Pier this winter during the polar vortex. So pretty impressive site. I will note for all of you that that is a section that won't be rebuilt. That section is in good shape. We're talking about the nearshore portion of about 290 feet. This is the project design and implementation process. I'll go through all of this quickly, but so happy to answer any of your questions. The first was the master planning process, a very engaged process with our community members and various stakeholders. We then determined the planning priorities for the project. We're now in the design and permitting phase, designing of the pier itself, a walkway connector, and the revetments that occur on the beach. Agency review and coordination has been a big part of this phase, and at the same time, putting together the construction documents and the bid packages for the project. On the next slide, design criteria were developed. I'll hit just a few highlights. We obviously want to honor the master plan, minimize the ongoing maintenance of this pier, minimize the impact to the beach and to the lake, really looking at beach restoration and retention, minimize the closure of the pier that's already extended many more months than any of us wanted to see, and then minimize the impact on neighboring properties, and I'll revisit that in just a moment, and then provide access to the beach and other areas of the park through improved connectivity. So just a quick review, this is Bradstreet's Landing Pier as it exists today, and then some of the photographs that were taken that I shared with you several months ago. A little bit about the park. You see the deterioration in the pier itself. Yeah, this is the pedestrian bridge that connects the beach, and you see the undermining of that structure as well. And then this is the master plan for the park. Currently, we are focused on phases 1 and 2, and I'll talk about the scope of those two projects. Phase 1 and 2 are primarily the pier, the revetment, and this connector to the pedestrian bridge. Here's the pier. What we're focused on is seating and lighting, a railing that will allow for various activities to be enjoyed. Obviously, handicap accessibility, wave protection, and beach access. We reviewed several schematic designs. These are 3 of them. We applied all of the design criteria to each of these and did come up with a preferred option, preferred approach. It is the top one on this slide. This is the one that is being shared with all the regulatory agencies. It won't be any surprise to county council members. There are 6 agencies that oversee this project or will be overseeing this project. This design has been shared with them, so there are parallel processes going on, the design, the bid documents, as well as the permitting and the submerged land leasing. This is a sheet pile approach that encases the pier, that nearshore portion, and obviously key, that sheet piling is very key to beach restoration, the resiliency of the beach itself. What's wonderful about this is that there will be no major demolition of the pier into the lake, which also means no barges into the lake. that also accelerates this process a little bit. So that is the good news about what we have learned through our engineers. Obviously, we need to traverse through all of the regulatory approvals and hoping to hit the construction seasons when they're upon us. This is just a cross-section I thought you might be interested in of how they're going to do this. The new pier will encase or be an envelope around the existing pier, and it will be shored up, really reinforcing the existing structure. So hopefully you can see where we're at. And again, no demolition, no barges needed. This is the schematic design. You'll note in the lower right-hand corner, the goals, obviously safety, accessibility, especially handicap accessibility, that it be low maintenance, that it be iconic, and really what we mean by that, it will be a special place to gather and something that we can all be proud of, but it will be beautiful in its simplicity, both in its design and the materials that we will be using. And I'll get into a few of those details in the next slides. We also don't want it to detract from really the natural beauty and the experience of the lakefront. And so we've concentrated a great deal on that. Safety too is the connectivity to the eastern portion of the beach, as well as the stream, as well as other parks. We very much subscribe to, Director Costello has been involved in the Greenways program that's been supported by the county, and we want to make those connections whenever we're investing dollars. We're now calling them Enviro connections, right, Director? But we feel strongly that when we have resources, we want to do that. I also wanted to show you this. Overall, on average, the pier will raise up about 4 feet. And this was important. You see the perspective. That's a building, residential building that sits just to the west of the pier. And we wanted to make sure that that view shed was not impacted by raising up of the pier. That was necessary for handicap accessibility. And these are just some of the concepts. We don't have railings and seating and other amenities finalized, but these are some of the things that we're thinking about in terms of railings. The railings are important because we want them to be accessible. Sorry about that. Or maybe this shows. So you see the various heights of the railing. That's so that someone in a wheelchair could fish off that pier just as well as someone who is standing up, and it also allows you to lean. It also allows for fishing equipment or maybe your lunch to be at your feet. This is the lighting concept. One of the things we didn't want, because so many people like to view the sunset and like to be out there at dusk or in the early morning, we didn't want the lighting to negatively impact the experience. And so it's all very low lighting, and that provides a safety aspect as well. Just a little bit of detail. So this is the connector, the walkway, like a boardwalk that will connect the pier with the pedestrian bridge. And these are the revetments. So it's a series of stairs that provide for that beach resiliency and an opportunity to sit and view the lake and have a comfortable seating area. This is, I know I'm going through this very quickly. I know some of you have another meeting. So this is the permitting process and the schedule. Probably the most important right now are all of the regulatory approvals that have to happen. I do want to stress, though, during this regulatory approval process, we have sent them a pier that is about 99% designed. Now, they may have small changes. Those affect other regulatory agencies, so it's a little bit of give and take, but there is a parallel process to have that design completed and the construction documents, so we're ready to go out to bid as soon as we receive the approvals. So let me just go through the 6 regulatory agencies that we're working with. The Threatened and Endangered Species Coordination, with U.S. Fish and Wildlife as well as ODNR. It is complete with U.S. Fish and Wildlife, and we're awaiting comments from ODNR. ODNR's shore structure, coastal erosion permit, and submerged land leases. We are working with them currently. Hopefully the final submission and the approvals will be mid-month in March. The Ohio EPA Section 401 certification, we're awaiting feedback from them, so we provided the design and the approach to them. So we're just waiting for their approval. The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers 404 review, that again is anticipated to be mid-March, that it would be submitted, and then the final approval. Again, we've been working with all of these agencies. The Section 106 review, that is the State Office on Historic Preservation, that is complete. And of course, Bradstreet's Landing is a historical park in our community as well as the region. So ongoing work, but again, to stress parallel processes so we can hit the ground running when we get those approvals. So the project funding, this is similar, if not identical. We will have better numbers once all of the permitting is final. We think we're fairly close on this. In addition to the grant money, the state capital money, and your very generous contribution, we are also looking at 319 funds. We're going to be applying with through the Cuyahoga County Soil and Water Conservation District for additional funds. The state capital budget, Dave Greenspan's been working with ODNR, trying to secure some additional funds. Congresswoman Capter and her staff have been extremely helpful to us, working directly with the Army Corps of Engineers, the Great Lakes Restoration Initiative, and we are hearing, although this is not finalized, that there will be congressionally directed funding available in the next budget cycle. And because of the love of the Great Lakes that Congresswoman Capter has, we are hoping that we will be successful in some level of funding through those initiatives. Congressman Gonzalez has also reached out and would like to work with her in a bipartisan fashion to secure those dollars. I also want to mention what the city of Rocky River has done in preparation of this project. So during our budget process, which begins in September and October, we pass it in the month of December. By that time, we had heard about what our projections would be for property taxes and the increase in property taxes. So we did two things. One, we reduced some property tax millage that was for a bond issue for our Civic Center, went from 1 mil to 0.78. So hopefully that was somewhat meaningful. But more importantly, we established a budget stabilization fund, and the additional projection, which is thought to be about between 1.2 and 1.3 million dollars, is going into the budget stabilization fund specifically for capital projects. In addition, we have a 0.5% capital income tax that we can also use. So I want to assure you this project will move forward. We hope to find outside funding and maybe hit the trifecta of state, local, county, state, and federal funding along with our local funding. So happy, I went through that really quickly. Happy to answer some questions. I don't know that I did it in the time allotted.
Oh, you did. Thank you for a very thorough presentation.
Thank you.
Let's open it up. Councilman Miller?
Mr. Chairman, Mayor, thank you. Thank you very much for the update, and I'm glad that we're making progress on getting this completed. And what is the estimated cost for all phases of the project?
It is north of, it's probably in total somewhere between with this project, close to $6 million for the entire, so the entire park the master plan for the park provides for some new stormwater management, a new restroom area and community gathering place, some historic monuments and a walkway connector, as well as some stream restoration, which is very, it's a large part of this project going forward and can be quite costly. That is an outfall for the regional wastewater treatment plant that's in our community.
And what is your goal as to when all phases would be completed?
We've been talking about that now. We did a little bit of that work during the budget process because, this is a big part of it. I would imagine we haven't finalized it, so I don't want to overstate where we're at, but I would imagine in the next 2 years we'll be commencing that with construction. What we're doing in the rest of the park is a little more straightforward. We could see about 3 to 4 phases, to answer your question, Councilman Miller. So the lakefront restrooms and gathering spaces, there is a connector on the west side. There is a new configuration of parking to open up a substantial amount of green space in that park. Those of you who have visited the park know there's a big horseshoe driveway with parking. Much of that park is asphalt. That will be removed. A parking lot that will accommodate a number of visitors will be replaced. We also have an option across the street on publicly owned land to add some additional parking so that we can have green space at the lakefront.
Regarding the current phase, it looks like construction is scheduled to begin early in 2020.
That is correct. And that is conservative because we're concerned about all of the regulatory agencies getting back to us in a timely fashion.
And is the start of construction on this phase contingent on receiving any outside funding additionally, or do you have sufficient local funding if necessary?
We will direct sufficient local funding if necessary. Yes.
This is one of very few spaces where the public actually has access to Lake Erie.
Right.
Yeah. How many, do you have a speculated number of visitors once this is completed?
Well, I would imagine that it will increase over the numbers that we gave you early on. And again, we don't see this as a highly programmed park. We don't, through Parks and Recreation, have classes there and things like that, although we do see paddle boarders and kayakers and groups going down there to receive instruction. But I do believe it will increase significantly, especially those that want to watch sunsets, those who want to fish. We don't have an estimated number. The engineers have taken that into consideration, and that's why we've looked to the land that's directly across the street from the park and opening that up for parking, and then looking at ways to bring individuals across the street. In fact, with the County Planning Commission, through our citywide master plan process, we talked about that, and Glenn Cohen thought it would be a great idea to have a skyway over Lake Road. I'm not sure that we're looking at building the skyway. We also have some room up above where our service garage is if we needed additional parking. So if we were to have, say, fireworks down there at some point, we have a great deal of parking at the wastewater treatment plant as well as our service garage if we need to park additional cars for those instances when we expect a large crowd to gather. Great questions.
Just to say that there is a great deal of excitement on the West Shore for this project, and I know once you start breaking ground, it'll really take off in questions and excitement and enthusiasm for wanting to enjoy the lake and the pier, and we're looking forward. And I know in your hands, I am not concerned at all about it being done and being done correctly and on time, and look forward to being there when you cut the ribbon and allow all of our residents to come and visit.
Great. Thank you so much. I appreciate that very much. And again, we appreciate your support. There is a likelihood that this fall, we could start to see some of the surface demo, things like that. It just depends. And so that timeline could be accelerated. And the next time that I visit with you, I'll be sure to bring the phasing of the rest of the project, the rest of the master plan with me, so you can see that as well.
Excellent. Councilman?
Just wanted to thank you for your presentation again, and to hear that you're going to come back. Generally, once we appropriate money, we don't see people anymore. And I'm half kidding, but it looks great. Love the way that you've taken care to protect what really is there in the first place, and the view of the lake and the area. So we're just really happy to be part of this.
Thank you, Council President. Any other
Further
questions?
comments? Okay. Well, Mayor, I appreciate it. Again, as our council president said, it's great to have you come back. We don't always have those to do that, but it's nice to have the update. And I'll say this, there's a nursing home, a senior center, a nursing home across the street.
Yes, there is.
And when I saw that, I just saw the value in that, and knowing the challenges that my parents have had. Just to be able to come out of a facility and to be in the fresh air and a nice just setting to be able to see the nature. You know, that has an incredible impact on someone's mental health. So this is a great project, and we're really happy to be partners with you.
Well, it's a great point that you made, Chairman. And one of the things that the Normandy Senior Living Facility has done, they have created walkways and connectors now to Bradstreet's Landing, which is just a wonderful thing, and they continue to grow. They just opened up a new facility, and I know the families really appreciate being able to go outside of the facility, not travel too far. There's a small store close to the park, and they'll go and grab some ice cream or a quick sandwich and then enjoy their time in the park. So we're moving towards a more beautiful place for them to gather. So thank you for your comments.
Good.
Thank you.
Again, congratulations to Mary Kay and to the entire staff, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. All right. Is there any miscellaneous business? No? Never any miscellaneous business. Huh? All right. Okay. Well, if nothing. Huh? Don't tempt fate. I know, that's right. Let's end this meeting now. If nothing else holds our attention, our meeting is adjourned.